Welcome back to Both Things Creative. My name is Zenna if you're new here. Today I'm going to bring you along with me as I make a jelly print start to finish. I would like to just also remind you that even though we are living in such troubling and uncertain times, art matters, creating things matters, self expression matters, and I highly encourage you to take some time and make something today. So let's get started. Okay, so coming into this, I have a kind of general idea of what I want the outcome to look like, but I try to not hold a specific vision in my mind because that often leads to just frustration or disappointment. And I find that I love making the art and the outcome more if I just go with the flow and make one mark and then make another mark. So here we go. I have two printed inkjet images. I printed these on the Office Depot business paper that I will add a link to below. It's the only glossy paper I have had success with for inkjet image transfer. Of course, you can always use a laser printer. That is a very different technique, and I have a video covering that, so I'll include that below also. But for now, I'm going to work with inkjet. I have hawks and this cage image. Two of my favorites that I've used a lot in my artwork. So I'm going to be working on an 8x10 gel plate. I think what I'm going to do is cut these images up into about maybe 2x2 squares, and then alternate them on my gel plate. So when you're doing the inkjet image transfer, there are some variables that I do cover in that longer tutorial, but making sure that you have a pigment-based ink in your printer is essential to getting this ink to transfer onto the plate. And just keep in mind, this paper is it's a glossy paper and very sticky, very sticky. When I get it on the plate, see how it lifts the plate right off the table, and it's kind of sometimes difficult to pull off. Other photo papers will adhere to your plate even more strongly and can actually ruin the plate. That's why I say this paper is the only one I've really had true success with. So as I'm cutting these, I set a general 2x2 square. These are more rectangular shape, but again, going with the flow, trying to get those to match up as best I can. All right, I have my cage. And now my hawks. I have 6 pieces of cage, so I'm going to aim for 6. I'll cut 6 of my hawks. And actually, that curved a little bit, but so I'm going to work with this one. I want them to be fairly similar size to the cage rectangles. There's 3. I'm going to avoid that curved side that I cut. Hopefully do a little better this time. There we go. And you'll see why in a minute. I'm actually going to use these images to not only transfer the hawk onto the plate, but also use them as a mask. So let's see. First, I'm going to lay these down in kind of an alternating pattern. And you do want to lay the inkjet printed image directly on your clean plate. You want to put these prints down directly on the plate, not have a layer of acrylic or paint or anything on the plate in front of the image, or this ink is not going to transfer onto your plate. So let's see. I am doing this in a random fashion. Some of it's coming off of the plate. That's okay. I said I was going to, you can always take a peek, kind of see how things are looking. That's why I actually like to work on a fabric or felt surface instead of directly on a cutting mat. It's easier to pick the plate up and move it. And that bird's upside down. We're just gonna go with that. Okay. You think this is all kind of an experiment. I said I'd keep the bottom of the cage at the bottom, but I'm not going to anymore. Now I'm gonna pull up every other square rectangle. That didn't transfer very well. Let's see. That didn't either. Okay, I pulled up all of my papers and some transferred fairly well, and I was not really happy with how the birds transferred. They're very light, you can't really tell what they are. And these prints that were kind of sitting around in my studio for a couple weeks, and I've used inkjet prints weeks after I printed them in the past, and they worked fine. This time, some of them didn't. So I'm going to clean this off. I have some baby oil here on the plate. I'm going to clean the plate again and start fresh. I'm including this so that we all run into roadblocks. We all think we know what we're doing sometimes, and things just don't work as planned. But not to fear. This was a minor investment, and I'm going to clean my plate and start fresh. So that this may have had something to do with how well I cleaned the plate in the first place before I started filming. Maybe some of the areas weren't really that clean, so there was a little grime on the plate that was blocking the ink from adhering. That could be true. So this time, I think what I'm going to do is clean with baby oil first, which gets the ink off, and then with some Dawn dish soap and water for an added level of clean. And I will be right back. Okay, I printed a new fresh print of my hawks from out of my inkjet printer and cut them up. And as I was searching for my cage image, I found a different cage image I had downloaded from Adobe Stock. And I like this one a little bit more for this print, so I'm going to try it with this. And this is an excellent time to just point out that mistakes can lead to new ideas, innovation, change, and maybe even a better result than you were planning in the first place. So I hope that's the case. Let's keep going. I am going to, let's see, cut that right down the middle. And now I have to decide how I'm going to bring in the element of the open door or not. I could trim that and it would probably kind of get lost, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna try and leave it in if I can. Okay. Now that I've done this once, actually doing it the second time, I feel like I have a little bit better plan in mind, which is nice. That's going to be a cage. That's going to be a bird. And now I want the top of the cage. That over here. Trying not to overthink it. Okay, not as cleanly placed as I had in mind when I began running with this idea, but I think it's still going to end up pretty neat. Let's pull some off. Okay. Hopefully these transfers work a little bit better. That one did not. That one's pretty good. I think I'm gonna stick with this for the first layer of paint. Okay. have all of these pieces to save. These are ones I didn't use for future projects. Awesome. Okay, I've semi-randomly selected these 3 colors to work with: a pink, parchment, and olive green, a light olive green. Somewhat of a complementary color scheme, but not precisely. Let's see. I'm gonna lay down parchment first. Not too much. We're not covering the whole plate, really. We're gonna try and just cover the open areas on the plate. There's so many kind of variables here about the thickness of the layer, how complete you cover the plate. Do you want it to have a cleaner feel with a very evenly spread layer across the whole surface, or do you want to leave it a little splotchy? Each of these decisions communicates something in the end. I'm going to leave it a little splotchy and then use this paper, which is an art paper with metallic printed on it. I'm hoping it works as a resist, leaving some paint on the plate and pulling some up. Did nicely down here, not so much here. First layer down. What do we want to do next? I'm thinking a little green, and a little pink down below. Start with the green. I'm working fairly improvisationally, but that's how I like to make art. Okay, a little bit up there. Okay, we're gonna leave that layer. I might try again in here with these. Nice. A little texture in those spots. Okay, I'm gonna pull these up. I'm really liking the paint in between the papers. Wow. Okay. I really like this. And it makes me happy. It makes me happy to make things. Okay, I'm gonna get my hairdryer out and dry this layer very briefly. I always recommend using the hairdryer on the cool setting so you don't warp your plate. Occasionally I do use it on the warm setting, but I keep it about a foot away from the plate and do it a few seconds at a time. Okay, more decisions to make. Do I stick with the 3 colors I began with? I think I do. I do want to point out you could always come back and reverse paint here. You could continue to mask off parts of the plate, parts of these images. You could come in with Posca markers. Anything that's acrylic will work on the plate. There's so many ways to go, so many directions to go here, but I'm gonna kind of stick with what I've been doing, which is layers of paint, fairly simple textures, and then we'll see the end result. Okay, I started with the parchment last time, right? So that was the first layer I put down. It's the first layer you're going to see in the final print. I'm going to reverse things and start with the pink and the green, and then I will fill in any empty areas and pull the print with the parchment last. Now I'm wondering if I want to block some of these. If I cover this whole plate with the olive green and the pink, it'll darken these areas. And what I think I really want is more contrast. So I'm going to cut some small pieces of paper to use as masks to preserve these lighter areas, and then add the green and the pink behind them. I'm going to use just regular copy paper to cut out these masks. I am not going to measure or make them exactly precise because I think it might add actually more interest if they're not. Now, I do want to point out this paint is dry. If it was wet and I put this paper down on it, it would adhere to the paper and pull the print. And we're not ready for that step yet. When I have masks down like this, I like to put my paint onto my brayer instead of onto the plate directly, because then I can begin my pull on the paper and not have to push up against it, which makes it move from its place there. So I have some paint on my brayer. I'm going to do that, and it can still be tricky to get the masks to stay in place. Okay. Now I have this paper that it's like a packing paper. I'm gonna lay that down. Which creates a pretty neat geometric pattern there. Pull these up. Let me try that off, and just so you can see some of the texture on the plate. That's from that art paper, and this is from the packing paper. Okay, I think we're ready to pull. Part of me wants to add one more color to this, but I'm going to resist the urge to do that, and we'll see what we end up with. I'm going to pull using this fluid watercolor paper hot press finish. That means a smooth finish. It is one of my favorite papers. I buy this online. For watercolor paper, it's middle of the road, I guess. It's not too expensive, but it's definitely pricier than like a mixed media paper, a lighter weight paper. This is a 140-pound paper. I'm going to pull using the parchment, which, as a reminder, is going to be the background color behind everything we've laid down so far. I want a nice, even, thin coat, not too thick. Be sure to get the edges. Do my best to get it centered. And even pressure across the entire back surface, and definitely along the edges. Sometimes when I miss an edge and the paint doesn't completely dry or adhere onto the paper, when you pull it, that wet paint or that paint stays on the plate and then can keep some of your print along with it as you pull the paper up off the gel plate. Sometimes I use books on top. Usually if I'm doing a lot more layers than this and like reversed painting, All right. Okay, let's pull this print. It's actually been a few hours. I just started working on another project and got distracted, but I think I probably could have pulled this in 30 minutes and it would have been good to go. So let's take a look. There we go. Okay. So well, not as much contrast as I was really hoping for, although I really love the block shaped and the kind of checkerboard pattern here. And I think you can identify the shape of the cage, which was a goal of mine. And I really love how the texture came out. The art paper here and then that packing paper there. So I may go in and embellish this a little bit with a metallic marker or leave it as is. Honestly, I'm not sure yet, but I'm pretty happy with it. So let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments. And if you like this video, I hope you'll subscribe. Join my email list down in the description and let's stay in touch. Thanks for being here.